With the colder weather, some of us may be dreaming of the summer as well as the beach, which makes it a perfect time for me to dream of passenger rail that goes to the beach. In this case, Myrtle Beach. There is no passenger rail service to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, a major tourist destination. The closest Amtrak station is in Florence, South Carolina, about 70 miles away. And in this video, I'm going to make a proposal to fix this, thus combining urbanist desires with beach vacation life. I think it would be reasonable to propose medium speed rail along this line that has an average speed of about 80 miles per hour. The line to Myrtle Beach will start in Atlanta, but not at the Atlanta station you all may be thinking of. You might have thought that I'd start a line at the Peachtree station. Nope. I'm proposing another Amtrak station for Atlanta, at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. You can connect between the airport and Peachtree station by local rail transit in Atlanta, but it takes a little while to get from the airport to Peachtree station. My hope is that direct Amtrak service between the airport and Peachtree station will shorten the journey. Between the airport and Peachtree station, the tracks I propose building would parallel Interstate 85. As to the logistics of that, I leave this to engineers. But following Interstate 85 would take you pretty close to the Peachtree station, which in an ideal, train-dependent world, would be for trains what Hartsfield-Jackson is for airplanes. Heading out of Atlanta, I'd use a path that is the same as the existing rail right-of-way to the next stop, which is in the Atlanta suburb of Tucker. It's a suburb with a population above 36,000, and it has no rail service. We can fix that with this line. The stop afterwards would be in Lilburn, a suburb with a population over 15,000. Given the smaller population compared to some cities on this route, I'd be open to having some trains skip Lilburn. The next stop would be in Lawrenceville, which has a population of just over 30,000 people. One thing I should note as I talk about this stop and the preceding two stops. While improving transit connectivity in the suburbs northeast of Atlanta wasn't necessarily something I had in mind when I conceived of this line, this is what this line would end up doing. It's severely needed, because endlessly adding lanes to Interstate 85 clearly isn't the solution. Like, this is 14 lanes of ridiculousness, and it still has traffic jams. The next three stops are ones that I think can be skipped by faster express service, but should still have local stops. Those stops are at Dacula, Auburn, and Winder, in that order if you're heading east. Dacula has a population just under 7,000 people, but it has tripled in population size in just the last 30 years. Auburn has somehow gone from having about 7,500 people to about 9,700 people in 3 years. I feel like I should have someone in the Atlanta area fact check that, because that just seems wild. And Winder has gone from having just over 7,300 people to having over 18,000 people in the last 30 years. The next stop would be in Athens. No, not that Athens. Athens, Georgia, home to the University of Georgia, which has about 30,000 undergraduate students and a pretty good college football team from what I hear. Speaking of college football, the university's football team has over 90,000 fans at its home games. On days Georgia has home games, there should definitely be extra rail service before and after the games, heading between there and Atlanta. This is the last stop in Georgia. The line more or less follows existing rail right-of-way into South Carolina, though I may want to straighten out some of the curves I see with the line. The first stop in South Carolina would be in the city of Greenwood, which has a population above 22,000 residents as of the 2020 census. It is apparently home to the South Carolina Festival of Flowers, which apparently has brought over 80,000 visitors in the past few years. Maybe it's a good idea to provide a fast, car-free way of getting to the festival. The next stop would be in Clinton, which has a population of about 7,600 residents. And then there would be a stop in Newbury, home to just over 10,000 people. Not a lot to say about either stop, but they are good, solid, small city inclusions along this route. The next major stop is in Columbia, the capital city of South Carolina. Columbia already has an Amtrak stop, but the only Amtrak service to Columbia at the moment is the daily Floridian long-distance train between Chicago and Miami. Certainly, this line would be a significant enhancement to the service that currently exists at a stop, serving a city whose population is well in the six figures. It would also serve another major university, the University of South Carolina. Speaking of extra service, it might be worth running some extra game day service when South Carolina football packs its 80,000-seat stadium. I would have trackage paralleling the existing trackage between Columbia and Sumter, which is the next stop. There are over 43,000 people in Sumter, thus making it a sensible place to have a stop. There are no rail tracks between Sumter and Conway, so in this section, completely new tracks that don't even parallel existing tracks will need to be built. The new tracks would either run along or run roughly parallel to US 378. The next stop would be at Lake City, which has just over 5,900 people as of the 2020 census. At this location, the line ends up crossing paths with the North-South Palmetto and Silver Meteor Amtrak lines. Because of this crossing of paths, there would be also a new stop for these two lines at Lake City, so that people can transfer between these two lines and the line I'm conceiving of, and vice versa. Because I envision a Lake City stop as being a station where people can transfer trains, I would have all trains stopping here, despite Lake City having a lower population size than many cities I have the faster train skip. The following stop would be in Conway, South Carolina, which has a population of just under 25,000 people as of the 2020 census. On the outskirts of Conway, the line would then run on, or parallel to, trackage that runs along US 501. And it will remain that way for the rest of the line. On that portion of the line, I would add a stop for Coastal Carolina University, since the trackage basically passes by the university anyway. With it being a school of over 10,000 undergraduates, it just makes sense to have a stop there. I mostly see it being a stop that express trains skip, though at the beginning and end of school breaks, as well as major events such as Coastal Carolina football games, I think all trains should stop there. And then last, but not least, is our final destination of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. All told, it serves 18 stops if I counted correctly, with the majority of them being new to the Amtrak network if it were built. It includes the major city of Atlanta, adds the world's busiest airport to the Amtrak network, connects 3 major universities, connects 2 other cities with 6-digit populations, and connects to the major tourist destination of Myrtle Beach. But is this a good proposal? Let's find out. In order to get a sense of how good my idea actually is, I'm going to score this proposed line on 5 criteria that determine the ability of a line to get built in the first place, and then the ability of the line to succeed when built. Those 5 criteria are feasibility of proposal, time saved versus other modes of transport, population served, anticipated demand, and impact on the greater Amtrak network. I'll score all these metrics out of 20, so that way our final score is out of 100. First, feasibility. This line is kind of a mixed bag from a feasibility standpoint. The good news is that most of the line has existing tracks, meaning that you can probably build new tracks paralleling existing ones without causing too much property destruction. The fact that topography isn't particularly unforgiving is also good. The fact that the state of Georgia will probably have to contribute funding in order to make this possible? Not so good. For some bizarre reason, the state of Georgia has never contributed any funding to the entity that runs Atlanta's transit system, MARTA. If they don't even want to fund existing major transit, I don't have faith in their willingness to fund new mass transit. But I guess building more traffic lanes is A-OK with them, despite evidence showing that lane widenings don't actually help traffic. South Carolina doesn't strike me as being super generous with their mass transit funding, but at least they've given some money to bus systems in places like Charleston and Columbia, showing that they have some willingness to fund mass transit. Still, because the state of Georgia and mass transit funding seem to go together like oil and water, the feasibility score is going to take a hit as a result. I give this line a score of 13 out of 20 for feasibility. I took a look at the time saved versus other modes of transport. This isn't a home run for trains from a time saved standpoint, but it isn't a black mark type of situation either. I will also add that the time saved is going to be variable, depending on whether you're on a train that makes all the stops or a train that skips some of the stops in smaller cities. I think it's most advantageous from a speed standpoint between Columbia and Myrtle Beach, because there's no interstate highway connecting the two cities. But the train isn't put to shame in the other major city pairs I list either. And when you consider the fact that you can work or text on the train, something you can't do when driving, it's probably a net time savings for you to take the train rather than drive. So for time saved, I give this a 15 out of 20. Now to population served. Atlanta is the only major city on this line. But as I said previously, there are two other 6-digit cities served on this line, in Athens and Columbia. And then Myrtle Beach's population apparently swells to 350,000 people during the summer, larger than the population sizes of Pittsburgh, Orlando, and Cincinnati. This line might not have quite the wow factor in the population served department that my Tucson to Phoenix to Las Vegas high-speed rail line proposal had, but it's still a good line in this department. I give this line a 16 out of 20 for population served. As for anticipated demand, I took a look at airport statistics to begin getting a sense of what it might be like. I also did some hypothesizing where I didn't have airport data. The Columbia Airport had 191,000 passengers go from there to Atlanta between April 2022 and March 2023. And then the Myrtle Beach Airport had just over 160,000 people go between there and Atlanta between July 2023 and June 2024. You add on to that all the college students at Coastal Carolina, the University of South Carolina, and the University of Georgia who will take the train because college students drive in lower proportions than other Americans. And then you add on to that the fact that this line ends up unintentionally serving the rapidly growing suburbs northeast of Atlanta. Adding all of this up, while I don't expect this to set ridership records, I think such a line, if executed well, will have good ridership. I give this line a score of 16 out of 20 for anticipated demand. The last metric to consider is impact on the greater Amtrak network. This line connects to 4 different Amtrak lines: the Crescent train at Atlanta's Peachtree Station, the Floridian at Columbia Station, and the Palmetto and Silver Meteor trains at the new Lake City stop. I can see people transferring between trains at these stops, thus adding ridership to these other lines as well. Think of it this way. If a train enthusiast who wants to take a train to vacation in Myrtle Beach suddenly realizes that Myrtle Beach has an Amtrak station, and that you can take your Amtrak train to connect to the line that heads to Myrtle Beach, you might suddenly end up taking Amtrak. The only issue is that all the lines this new service would connect to are only once daily trains. But the sheer volume of connectivity with other parts of the Amtrak network is genuinely impressive. Hence my giving this a 19 out of 20. All told, I give this proposed line a score of 79 out of 100. I think this would be a good, useful way to get around this portion of the southeastern United States. But I think that this line suffers in the feasibility department, since the state of Georgia does not seem particularly supportive of mass transit. Dear Georgia, If you hate how much traffic there is around Atlanta, maybe consider improving MARTA's service by funding MARTA. Improving mass transit is one way of reducing car traffic. If you have any thoughts on this rail line proposal, please leave a comment in the comment section below. Make sure also to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and have a good day.